It's time for our closing keynote, and we couldn't be more excited for this one. Some brands deliver great customer service. Zappos is world famous for it. Every member of the online retailer's customer loyalty team is trained to go above and beyond for their customers, while always keeping the company's first core value in mind: deliver wow through service. As their Senior Director of Customer Service, Rob Siefker leads Zappos' customer loyalty team and has spent his entire career at the company striving to provide the very best service for both customers and Zappos team members. Rob joined Zappos.com in January 2004 as a temporary call center employee. Since then, he's helped the customer loyalty team grow from 30 to 500 employees. In this keynote session, Rob will discuss how outstanding service depends on employees who are fully engaged and driven to be helpful. And he's going to show you exactly how to deliver wow in your own company. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the Boundless stage, live from Zappos headquarters in downtown Las Vegas, Zappos Senior Director of Customer Service, Rob Siefker.
Hi. Thanks for having me. This is a pretty awesome honor today to have the opportunity to speak to everybody. It's a little different. Usually I'm speaking to groups in person, so I usually have this exercise, and I'm just going to tell you what it is. So if you ever see me speak again, you know what's up. It's kind of just a silly thing I do. I always pull out my cell phone and I ask everybody to either put their hands like this or put their hands like this. And then I take just a still picture of that, and it looks like they're clapping for me. But I heard a little bit of clapping right after I got introduced. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, let's get going on this. So as the introduction stated, I've worked at Zappos basically my entire career. I turned 40 this year, and I started when I was 23 years old. And it's been a great adventure. We've had a lot of ups and downs and learnings and along the way at Zappos, and it's been great. And like I said, learned a lot of things. And the great thing about it is that we've always had this obsession about customers and an obsession about having a great culture for our employees so that they can then deliver that great experience for customers. So this is a little bit about me. I'd never worked in a call center before I started at Zappos. I didn't even know I was going to be working at Zappos when I got assigned as a temporary employee. I was just told to go to this office, an address, knock on a specific door and ask for a guy named Ned, which I thought was very bizarre instructions for showing up for a job. And I didn't think that working in a call center was going to be something I'd ever be super passionate about. But getting exposure to Zappos and the way that we wanted to do business, we were very small then, 30 people about in the call center. And but I quickly realized that we had our own playbook that we were going to write up. We weren't going to follow somebody else's instructions on how we wanted to do it. We were going to kind of forge our own path. And, the instructions I was given after the second day, I was just shadowing with someone. After lunch on my second day, I was on the phones on my own. And somebody just told me, well, just wow the customer. And I thought to myself, I'd gone to college in the Bay Area, in South Bay at Santa Clara University. And I'd seen the .com boom and bust happen right in front of me, because I started in school in 1998 and I graduated in 2002. And when I started at Zappos, I thought, here we go. Here's another .com. It's not going to survive because they want to wow customers. And that was just growing up and thinking about business world. Wowing customers and like doing nice things for people didn't seem to be what the business world was all about. And finding a company like Zappos that had a different mission was something I was really excited about. We've just a quick history. We just turned 20 years old as a business last year, which I think is a pretty cool milestone. Most companies are destined to fail. That's just the trajectory, of businesses. They don't last forever. So for us to at least be able to make it to 20 years was pretty exciting. And we've been pretty successful along the way. These are, a few milestones on this slide that can kind of give you an idea of, how we've measured up. And for me, I've never necessarily felt like we've ever even done a great job. I've always felt that we need to do a lot more for customers, a lot more for our employees. These things are really nice, but the moment you get recognized, if you think that's the end game, you're going to kind of be in a bit of trouble. It just kind of has to motivate you to work a little bit harder, because there's always going to be somebody out there who wants to do a better job. So just a little bit about Zappos and kind of our work, keeping it really simple for us. We're an online retailer. We sell stuff. And, when Zappos was founded in 1999, the idea of selling shoes over the internet seemed like a fool's errand, so to speak. How is that going to work? You need to go to a store, try product on, make sure it fits right, see what it looks like, feel it. And so, right out of the gate, there's a lot of skepticism about whether or not we'd be able to do it. And, obviously it's important what customers see come to the website. They're going to see what kind of products, what brands do you sell? For us, additionally, there's the policies. We had to make, really friendly, customers focused policies. And then we have to follow up with that. What do customers experience as they browse for product on the website? What does that look like? And we want to make sure that we're doing things in all of these areas that the customer is going to want to interact and feels like they can trust the brand. As an example, free shipping and free returns was a big deal when we started doing that. And I think it was a really good, big catalyst for our ability to have some success. So your culture is your brand. For us, culture, values, those things are not just about coming up with a list of things that you want to aspire to. It was about coming up with things that we are. Our CEO, Tony, collaborated with the employees to build our core values, but we didn't release those for years after we'd even been in existence. But our culture is really what's driven everything, and that's really who people see us to be. We have a service culture, and people see us as a company that provides great service and can inspire others to provide great service. And we're also a culture of people know us as treating employees well and having a fun place to work, which really feeds that cyclical nature of treating customers well, treating employees well, and really kind of seeing how that can deliver results for the company, ultimately over time financially to see some success with that. So for us, what is our culture? Because I think culture can sometimes be kind of a confusing and abstract kind of a thing. And really what you do on a day-to-day basis, how you operate your business, is what your culture is all about. It's not just the core values or what you write down on the wall or on your badge. It's a number of things that really make up the components of what your culture is all about. And so for us, it does start with really our core values and especially our people. And then we also think about the organizational systems, how we manage the people in the business, the work in the business, and the tools and systems that we use internally to get that done, because it impacts how people interact with each other. And so it's an important part of that cultural, well-rounded kind of approach from our perspective that really allows for us to be successful and drive our culture forward in the ways that we want to make sure that we manage to it. Because, you can write stuff down, say, this is who we are, but that's not going to end up being the end output in terms of the actions, how people interact with each other, how they get work done together, how they collaborate, how they're held accountable. It's not just about the values. There's a bit more to it than that. So here's, for us, when we started, because I think we've kind of layered some of these things together. I think Zappos is from a cultural perspective, I started in 2004. We did not have core values. And we didn't even, honestly, I don't even know if I heard the word culture talked about at Zappos for 6 months to a year after I started. And then we moved to Las Vegas in the middle of 2004. And we started hiring a lot of people that were new to the company. We started growing very quickly. And we started talking more about how do we protect what we'd been building. And we realized, gosh, we kind of maybe in some ways we've been building a culture and didn't even know it. But what did it mean? How would we define it? And as I mentioned previously, our CEO, Tony, didn't just go in a room and create it with just a couple of other executives. It was a collaborative process with all employees. And we kind of looked at what are the things that people do at work now? What are the attributes, behaviors that really we see as defining who we are? And then how do we refine that? And at first, I think there were 37 attributes that we had, which is far too many. You're never going to get anybody to remember it, and 10 is already enough. But these were our 10 values. And it was not until 2006 on Valentine's Day that these were announced to the entire company as the official 10 core values of Zappos. And we really do try to, in our day-to-day, incorporate how are we living and breathing through our actions, and how do we improve upon this through living and breathing through these values as an organization to really deliver great results for employees and customers. And mind you, you can read all of these. We don't advocate anybody to adopt our values ever. What I think is a suggestion or a thing to think about is we do believe that it's important to have them, and then to actually follow through and say, hey, if we're going to say this is who we are, let's act in these ways as well. So how do we? This is like on the people side for us. We, I talked about in 2004 we moved to Las Vegas, and we were also in a hyper growth mode at the time. Hiring people was a necessity. But I don't know if we knew at the time how to hire people well. And I would say if I could go back and do it all over again, I would say we would put a lot more rigor into the process of how do we move quickly to hire a lot of people, but how do we make sure as we're hiring a lot of people quickly, we hire the right people at a higher percentage rate? Because it's challenging once you bring people in. How do you make sure that if they're not a good fit, do they not stay? So, but a few things for us, we have, the application process, and these are just illustrative. These have been at different points in our time, questions that we've asked people, like if you entered a room and a theme song played, what would your song be and why? Or how lucky do you consider yourself in life? We have some technical assessments of people. We have people come into the office, although right now we don't, but and then the hiring process is going to incorporate both the application, interviews, tour. You're going to interview with the recruiter, and you're also going to interview with a member of the leadership team in the call center specifically. And you have to be able to pass all of these parts in order to get the job in the call center. And that's how we do it for our group, because we generally, when we are in a hiring time frame, we have to hire large quantities, so we have to go through a lot of candidates. In other parts of the company, candidates could be on campus for a day or two, going out to lunch, interviewing with lots of different role holders and people with different job functions where they'll have to interact. So it's even more in depth on the in-person side with the other areas in the company than it even is in the call center. And something that we kind of try to keep in mind is, hire slowly, in the sense that you want to make sure you hire the right people. And I talk back to the hyper growth period where I don't think we did that as effectively. We got better at it as we realized, hey, you can't just put butts in seats. You have to be a little bit more thoughtful. It's challenging during high growth periods, but hire slowly and appropriately. And if somebody's just really not a great fit, then you need to see them on their way. And I'd say more often than not, it's easier said than done, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't be trying to make that an important part of how you manage the workforce. And then, something that I think is pretty widely known during our new hire training process, we also have something that we call the offer as well. So the offer is you get paid to quit. So basically, if this isn't the job for you, here's some money, walk away, no hard feelings. So that's kind of also a part of the process. These are just like, I think I have a couple pictures of here, just different things. This is probably, I think this might've been a St. Jude's kind of fundraiser. I think that more than anything, it's just illustrating sense of team. This was at our old office in Henderson, just groups of people coming together to support a specific cause. And I can guarantee that at this time in our history at Zappos, this was going to be an organically driven employee thing. This is not going to be like an organized day company, like we're all doing this thing. Probably somebody had an idea, and then they asked if they could do it, and they was given the time and the space to make something happen. We've had situations, as an example, where we had one of our team leads was helping out on the phones one day, and they talked to somebody who had to exchange some shoes, and they were having to do a funeral for a friend of somebody who's been at St. Jude's specifically, actually. And that whole thing turned out into us sponsoring some of the services, and like we actually flew out some of the friends that had also been patients at St. Jude's, and we did a big fundraiser for them. And that was, again, another thing that's just organically driven by employees, that they were given the space, they asked for some budget, someone said yes to it, and they were able to make that happen. And that really just is like a community-oriented kind of a thing. But again, employee-driven in that sense. So when we think of customer service at Zappos, we also don't think of it as just the call center. So we say that we're a service company that just happens to sell shoes or handbags or clothing. And right from the get-go, when somebody's hired at Zappos, we make it clear up front that we have a very service-driven culture. So it doesn't matter, as an example, whether you're hired to be the chief operating officer or a frontline call center employee, you go through the same 4-week training that everybody in the company is going to be required to go through. And you're going to get on the phone and you're going to talk to customers. So there is no exemption for that. That is a hard and fast rule that we've had. And when we first started off that program to do that, the training wasn't 4 weeks long at the time, but our CEO and chief operating officer, so Tony and a guy named Alfred at the time, they went through the new hire training process with a group of call center employees. And they did it incognito because Tony wasn't yet as famous as he is now. And so nobody had a clue who he was. And they went through the class just like everybody else, and kind of set the tone for the whole organization to have to do that. Excuse me. So these are a few things just to kind of, I've gone over a couple of them, but one thing that I always think of, and I'm particularly sensitive, especially as a consumer, right? You have companies out there that market themselves as being something. Either they provide the greatest product, or they provide the greatest service, or they're going to conquer this for you. And I'm not going to get into any examples where I think companies miss the mark, but there is this message to customers about something, and what they actually follow up with and follow through with for a customer, they are not the same thing. And by no means are we perfect. We've screwed up before, and we'll screw up again. But for us, I think it's always really important. If we're going to tell people we're a customer service company, we want to wow you. I mean, that is who we say we are. So we sure as heck want to make sure that the things that we do internally match up with that message we're saying to customers. And so, we say we're a service company. We're going to provide great service. If you call us, we'll help you with whatever you need. The first thing on here, we don't have call times. So customer can call us up and they can be on the phone for as long as they want to. We've had, I think our record phone call is just under 11 hours, which I don't know how that's even possible. And I've been here a long time. And the employee gets up if they have to use the restroom, and the customer will wait on hold for a few minutes to come back to talk to them. That's happened. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but it's allowed. If you want to be on the phone for 5 minutes, 30 seconds, an hour, doesn't matter to us. As long as the customer's needs are met, they have a casual conversation, have fun, get to know somebody on our team, that's okay with us. We just see that as an opportunity to build our brand, build a relationship with somebody, and for them to know that they get to talk to real humans at Zappos that care about providing great service. It's not just a transactional thing, and that's the only thing we care about. Obviously, the transaction is important, whatever it may be, but we want to make sure that they know that we're there for them and they're able to give them our time. We still believe that the phone is a great branding tool. It's a great branding opportunity for us. Customer contacts shift to different channels, and I've certainly seen, different communication channels being used by customers. But the phone still takes up the bulk of our resources and the bulk of our time. And that's customer driven. We give them multiple ways to communicate with us, but there's still some customers that really love talking to us, and we want to make sure that they get a great experience through that. I think another unique thing is we sell stuff, but we don't try to sell stuff too much. We're not trying to supersize your meal deal or anything like that and try to oversell socks because you're buying shoes or whatever may be the case. We don't measure our employees on whether or not they've closed a sale. We measure them on whether or not they've provided a great experience to customers, and we just ask our customers for their feedback on those interactions. I mentioned the 4 weeks of new hire training. Somebody that's coming to the call center to do customer service for Zappos, they're also going to be in a 3-week period where they get an additional amount of training and on-the-job help to make sure that they're really fully prepared for the job. So that's another thing that we layer on in addition to that initial 4 weeks, because the first 4 weeks incorporates learning how to help customers, but it incorporates a lot of understanding the history of Zappos, why we are who we are, how we do things, understanding of the organization, understanding of organizational systems and things that they'll have to interact with. So we have this additional 3 weeks in the call center to make sure people are really fully up to speed on how to wow customers. Here's a few pictures of what we call PEC cards. Our employees can write these whenever they want to. We can send cookies, flowers. We've had different things like blankets or different things that customers may want. We kind of gathered feedback over the years of what people like when they randomly get a little gift or surprise from Zappos. And interestingly enough, the flower thing was an organically driven thing by an employee. We had a customer that called up. They'd had something kind of semi-tragic happen in their family. Our employee really wanted to send them flowers. We said, okay. It turned into a really big deal. The customer was just so thankful about it. And we were like, you know what? We should be really nice to customers when they have even these types of situations come up and make sure they know that we care. And so we started setting aside budget and giving some simple instructions for people of, hey, if you ever encounter a situation where you feel like you should send flowers to a customer, and now it incorporates cookies or some other things, go ahead and just send in a request, and the team that kind of handles the budget will filter out anything that maybe wasn't as good of a request, but most of them turn out to be fine. And then we send those things out. And then the cards, employees get plenty of access to these things, and we encourage them to take some time and write a handwritten note to a customer. Stuff like that doesn't get done very often these days, and people tend to appreciate it. I include this because this was just kind of a cool story. Pizza and happiness. Pizza has always come up at Zappos a lot, and people eat a lot of pizza at Zappos. So it was, I won't go into all of the stories about how pizza is connected at Zappos, but the first one is that it started with our CEO, Tony, used to sell pizza in his dorm. And then the guy who became our chief operating officer was his best customer. He used to buy a lot of pizzas, but he would turn around and sell individual slices to other kids in other parts of the dorm complex. And so that's how they became friends. But for this call center, we had a story where JetBlue called us. I think it was JetBlue. Yeah, it was JetBlue. They called us up, and they they had a training class, and their training class was learning about other companies that provide great service. And they called Zappos, and they talked to one of our employees, and they said, "Oh, we're calling from the JetBlue training center or whatever." And our employee wanted to send them pizza. And so we ordered them pizza. And then the next thing you know, they're reaching out to us, and it turned into us having an allotment of JetBlue round trip plane tickets to be able to give to people on our team, which turned into a really cool story. You buy people pizza, you might go on a trip. I don't know. Seems like a pretty fair trade to me. But I think for us, it was giving an employee, like, they literally were like, "Hey, I think it would be cool if we sent their training class pizza." The fact that they are open to the idea because they know that they can pursue things that's going to go above and beyond to provide a really cool experience is great. And then the awesome thing that turns into those things is that kind of positive energy, and that wow gets reciprocated more often than not. And these kinds of stories can happen all the time. And it's really kind of fun and cool to participate and see those things happen. And it really lights up the employees. I mean, when they get to do something and they get a cool response, it is such a wonderful experience for them to get to do that. So empowerment at Zappos, impact on employees. I think I kind of touched on it, with some of the stories, but it's one thing to say, "Oh, you're empowered," but it's a different thing to be able to give people tools and an avenue to feel that and then act upon it. And I think that that's something that we've really tried to focus on, because again, just like the values, you can't just say it and then expect that to be what happens. You have to follow through on that and really shape it. And so for us, with the empowerment at Zappos, we want to make sure we give these people avenues with which they can have some ownership of the business, have some decision-making power, and then get involved in things that maybe are also above and beyond what they do normally on their day-to-day. So there's obviously a couple of tiles here with just some things that we do and what it means. But we have team meetings. We make sure everybody has the opportunity to speak. There's sacred space in the meeting formats that we have. Everybody has both the opportunity, but they have the space, and it's given to them in the context of the way things are structured to actually make sure that they're expressing themselves, make sure they have an opportunity to express their opinion or how they're feeling that day or what idea they may have. We also structure those things in a way to keep things also focused and moving forward, so they're organized. And the way we do things also instills a little bit of added ownership with the way that we distribute work and distribute special projects to people. It gives them that a little bit more kind of sense of pride in the roles that they do. And that includes people in the call center. I think a lot of times at companies you have in a call center environment, you may not give employees time and space, because time and space means money and lost productivity or lost efficiency. And for us, we're intentional about how we give people time and space and how we try to direct them in productive ways, because we do try to make sure people realize there needs to be purposeful things done with our time to deliver something that's adding value to the customer or to the business. And so giving a little coaching as well and support in that helps people really deliver beyond what they maybe expected when they started working here. And this is something that I talk about a little bit more at Zappos, and this is kind of a way to shape how teams should think about their purpose within the organization. One, we have internal customer-focused mindset. Is every team has to identify who they're actually serving within the organization. So whether it's an internal team that they're supporting or our direct customers online, but you have to have clear identified customers, and you have agreements and relationships with those customers in the sense of a service provider customer type of relationship. We think of that internally. In a simple way to put it would be, it's kind of like internally teams think about themselves as being business to business service providers. It's also kind of a little bit way of how we've structured how budgeting will be allocated to teams is through these customer relationships. internally. And then we also want to make sure people are keeping all of our culture and all of our values in mind as they do their work. So those are a few things. That was kind of the rundown of Zappos, and that's service that's outside the box. Everybody loves pictures of dogs in boxes. I feel like that always gets people to be happy. I always, this is the last thing I do during the presentation, and I have everybody read that. And this is feedback that we got from a customer. And we get feedback that's similar to this pretty regularly. And when I read this particular quote, it just surprised me, because I don't think of this as being what we do necessarily, but the outcome is amazing. Funny, a person that I have never met and probably never will touched my life in a lasting way. And we sell shoes and handbags and clothing. I mean, we're not saving the world, in my opinion, but we are trying to put a positive mark on it. And I just thought this is a kind of a cool quote to share from one of our customers. So thank you very much for having me and listening to some of the stuff that we do at Zappos and the way we think about things here.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as part of Boundless 2020. We have a ton of audience questions, actually, if you'd be open to answering a couple of those.
Sure. The good ones, please.
The good ones. You got it. I'll throw you some softballs.
They're probably fun.
Yeah, so this one I really like. It is... So, have you ever tried to measure ROI on kindness and your unique approach to customer satisfaction, or is it just something that you do organically?
Have we ever tried to measure the ROI on kindness? I think that the way we think about that is we look at our customer behavior and loyalty in terms of repeat purchasing as like the ROI on that. And if we can engage with customers, we also know that people that engage with our call center tend to be customers that are advocates, and they do tend to buy more frequently and spend more money. So in that sense, that's kind of how we think about it. That's kind of our return by providing great service. We know that having that avenue for customers to contact us does drive a business result. Now, not everybody contacts us all the time, but over the course of a customer's, life with us, if they do become a repeat customer, they are going to interact with us. The data proves that out. And so I guess for us, again, the return on this investment for us is that we do know that customers buy more and stay engaged with shopping with us for longer periods of time.
That's awesome. Wonderful. We have another one from the audience. How did your own views on empowerment shape the culture at Zappos, and how did the culture at Zappos shape your views on empowerment?
Wow. That's really deep. It's a really great question, because it goes to the core of like why I've stayed at Zappos for such a long time. When I first started, I was a temp. I thought I was supposed to work at Zappos for 2 to 3 days. That was what I was told. And for 4 or 5 months, I had to knock on a door with a little window on it to get access to the building. They didn't even give me a badge. But once I got through that door, I was on my own. Nobody gave me feedback. I was, which good or bad, it may have been bad that no one really talked to me. I started taking phone calls and I answered them, and I could do whatever I wanted. And it felt like I made the rules for what was best for that customer. And I felt like I had ownership of that experience. And as I, grew with the company and took on larger responsibilities, I reflect on that all the time of how do we make sure that the experience I had and why I fell in love with working at the company is an experience that other people can have too. there's certainly moments where you don't feel like you have the control over a situation and you may need help and support in that. But as a frontline employee, I had everything I could possibly have wanted. And so for me, that's like a sacred kind of thing to preserve. And so it's definitely shaped how I think we've tried to lead and continue to do that. And then how it's shaped me, like that was my experience. But the cool thing is like seeing more people take greater ownership and care more about the business makes it easier as a team to be successful. And then also the inevitable difficult situations. I mean, as an example, right now we're doing a lot of things organizationally to try to be more resilient as there's a lot of scare operationally with businesses with the coronavirus stuff. And with all of the changes operationally that we're having to make changes to, employees are engaged and they're excited and they want to help, even though it's disruptive to their lives, really. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Great response. I have a follow-up question on the note of feedback. If a job applicant isn't a culture fit, do you tell them that afterwards? What kind of feedback can be helpful in those situations?
I don't know if I think it's a little tough. Usually people will know what part of the interview that they're going through, and I don't know how direct we are in all those instances about the feedback for somebody that didn't pass. So we also tell people like, hey, you're encouraged to apply again after I think it's a 6-month waiting period that they're eligible to reapply for the job. I think that we're more focused probably internally on the feedback that gets super, super specific and detailed about those types of things, where someone's performance may not be up to par for a certain job, or if they have cultural improvements themselves, if they're already hired. But I don't think we probably get super nitty gritty on someone who's not even getting a job at all.
Got it. All right, I have another audience question for you. What tips would you share for busy teams to find the time and resources to organically organize group activities like volunteering?
Just do it. I mean, here's the thing that and I struggle with this sometimes too. And I'm not the one usually to be organizing things. Like for me, I love participating in those types of things, but I need somebody else to tell me what I'm going to do on that front, because I get so much satisfaction from like just working and collaborating with my team on the things that we need to get done. But when it comes to the team building stuff, you just have to make it important. If it's always at the bottom of the priority list, it will stay there. So at some point you have to just say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to carve out the time because it's important enough for us. And you just have to make that decision. You'll always be busy. And if you're not, then something's maybe wrong with the business, you know? So I would say you really just have to say, this is important enough, and we're going to carve out the time and make it a priority.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you. So we have another audience question. It says, owners of small and growing businesses know they need to be customer obsessed. Interviewing and hiring for customer obsession is great advice for making sure this value remains as the company grows. What is your favorite interview question to determine if a candidate will go above and beyond for your customers?
Favorite question about that? I think that asking them practical, real situations where have you identified a problem in your life, whether it be with a friend or a family member or a situation at work or wherever, where you've identified an opportunity for you to do something above and beyond to have an impact on someone's life, and then identify when that's been done for you and what kind of feeling did you have when it was done for you, and then how did it make you feel when you did it for someone else? Yeah. Trying to understand their emotional connection to those actions to see, do they identify with happiness on both sides of it, both a sense of appreciation when someone does something for them, where they were so thankful that it created a stronger bond and connection for them. And then also, how did it make them feel when they did something? And are they thinking about how they can more positively impact other people's lives? I think that you can learn a lot from people for that. And I've seen people really struggle with even understanding what that means when asking that question. So along those lines of being able to identify those moments in life.
Awesome. And we've got a few others, but just because I have to know, what's your personal walk-on song and why?
Nobody is going to know this song, I don't think, but my walk-on song would be the song Chilly Water, and it's by a band called Widespread Panic. They're kind of a southern rock and roll band from Georgia. And if you know that band and you've ever seen them play that song live, you'd know why.
We'll have to check it out, Rob.
Watch a video. People are throwing water in the air. It's a huge party. It's fun. It's awesome.
We'll follow up with that and think of you. All right, so I've got a real question. Here we go. So what would you tell a company whose representatives are encouraged to stick to a script and provide standardized answers?
What would I tell them?
Yeah.
About what specifically?
Sorry. So what would you tell a company whose standard process right now is to stick to a script, maybe cut phone calls short? Like, what kind of advice would you give to organizations like that to improve their customer experience?
I would probably start with some questions first, which probably doesn't help in this context, but I'd wonder, is what you're doing getting you the result that you want to see for your business? Are you measuring the right outcomes with those transactions? If you look at the call center on its own, standalone, as just a cost, not associated with what else is going on in your business in terms of what happens after those customers are not talking to you, you may be losing sight of whether or not your call center is delivering you any additional value. It's different we are a retail company. So for us, we get a little bit more flexibility. But I would say, are you driving great customer outcomes with that? And how can you drive better customer outcomes within the confines of what you may be required to do as owning the portion of the business that's related to the contact center? And think through, what things can you do to drive a better result for your customer and business, even with certain restrictions?
I think that's great. I think it's okay to respond to a question with a question like that. And, ultimately, I think that when we are kind of stuck to a script, we're not asking the questions and we're not able to be empowered to, take agency and take those conversations into our own hands. So I think that's a perfect response, Rob. Is there anything else? I know we've only got a few minutes left with you. Anything else you'd love to leave our audience with before wrapping up for the day?
Just love what you do and love the people you work with as best you can, and try to leave a positive mark on this planet we're on. I don't know. That's probably about it.
That's beautiful. I love it. It's been such a pleasure, Rob. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.